Get Rich Education is brought to you by Norada Real Estate Corporate Direct and Ridge Lending Group. Cash flow real estate investors, this is Get Rich Education's Keith Weinhold. Did you know that you can finance up to 35 income properties all with one lender? Ridge Lending Group specializes in investment property loans, and they do it in almost every U.S. state. Ridge has worked with tens of thousands of real estate investors and homeowners all over the country. They've been doing this for investors for so long that at this point, they've helped more families realize their dreams of becoming real estate investors than any other mortgage lender in the country. To find out more, visit ridgelendinggroup.com.
Welcome to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold, giving you information and ideas on the investment that has turned more ordinary people into millionaires and billionaires than anything else, and can provide you with more wealth and happiness than you ever thought possible. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, and educator, Keith Weinhold.
Welcome to Get Rich Education, episode 106. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold, here again this week because I've got that drive to help you build your wealth. We're talking with Get Rich Education's own business developer, John Collins, today about quitting your day job and how that intersects with, well, one of your favorite mental tug-of-wars, and really one of mine and everyone's favorite mental tug-of-wars, and that is, yep, it's that time versus money conundrum again. And our own John Collins recently quit his day job, but not his daydream. And later I'm going to ask John about how that feels and how he overcame that fear of ditching the job. And I'll give you some indicators that it might be time for you to leave your job. Some questions to ask yourself, other than the obvious parameter of when you have enough passive income to meet or exceed your living expenses, you can detach. And as a lot of you aspire to quit your day job, some of you might actually like your job and you're just seeking more passive income to live a substantially better lifestyle while you work that job, and that's fine too. In episode 100, I introduced the concept of the passive portfolio yield, or the PPY, okay? Your PPY, that passive portfolio yield, that's your annual passive cash flow divided by your net worth. Now, I had one listener call in by using the SpeakPipe app at GetRichEducation.com, and he told me that his PPY is 4%, which, for example, would be $40,000 of annual passive cash flow divided by $1 million net worth to yield that 4%. And he wondered, what's a good PPY? And I told him that 8% is a great number. So, for example, that would be $80,000 of passive cash flow generated from a $1 million net worth. That is achievable if you've turned enough of your equity into cash flow, okay? And often that's by using turnkey real estate or apartment buildings, or if you've qualified for all that you can there, maybe converting more of your equity into cash flow by using mortgage notes. So the PPY, it's again your annual cash flow divided by your net worth, and it's kind of an efficiency measure of how much cash flow your equity is producing. Retirement accounts are terrible for this. Of course, they are zero cash flow plans. They don't create income until you're in retirement. They actually take income away from you. And the more that you have locked into retirement plans, whether it's a 401k, 403b, 457, Roth or traditional IRA, and the like, the more watered down your PPY is going to be, and the farther from financial freedom you're going to find yourself. So again, I'm trying really hard to help you build your wealth and approach it from different angles, and optimizing your PPY, that's just a really smart top-down approach. So calculate yours, and that will help you identify where you have equity that is not producing cash flow. A couple days ago, I just wrapped up a trip to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where my wife and I stayed with my grandmother, Grandma Weinhold, whom I affectionately liken to Federal Reserve Chairwoman Janet Yellen because they kind of look alike. And it's amazing that my Grandma Weinhold, slash Yellen, she was born in 1922, and yet she still lives in her own home all by herself. I'm so proud of Grandma. And then after visiting my parents in upstate Pennsylvania, my wife and I find ourselves here today in Ontario, Canada. We are at Niagara Falls now, and we've been staying here at this Marriott Hotel on the Canadian side of the falls where you can look right out your window and see those falls right from your room. Just stunning stuff. And later today, we'll ride the boat out to the base of Niagara Falls. And, you know, there's kind of a lesson or a metaphor for you here. It's something I was thinking about as I was driving up here earlier. You know, when I travel and drive around, I've basically driven from Philadelphia to Buffalo in a roundabout way here the last few days. Well, what I like to do is I like to get out of the car and look at historical markers a lot, or just walk out onto a bridge and look at rivers a lot. Or if I see a low hill in the distance, I might even get out and run up it fast since I just spent the previous 2 hours sitting and driving. And I know that that would drive some people nuts right there, that stop and go stuff. Guys especially, they just want to drive and get to where they want to go or to where they think they want to go, and that's fine. Well, kind of like how I want to enjoy topography, geography, culture, and a unique sense of place as I travel. You know, such is life too. When you build streams of passive real estate income throughout your life, you have the latitude to take the time to take life in as you go, because with income, you're effectively able to buy segments of time, both as you travel along and once you get to where you're going. Well, that's unlike a stock investor that chooses to buy and hold for capital gains. Okay, they're hoping for a great retirement at the end of their journey, and that's it. And then at the end of their journey, they learn that they didn't have the money to live a great life. And even if they did accumulate enough to have a great life at the end, when they're in their 60s or 70s, they lack the energy, the vitality, or the vibrant life. So the destination wasn't as great as they had hoped for either. Plus, now they can't retrace their steps and get a richer journey back because it's just simply too late. And you know what a nice year for a stock investor is? Okay, let's just say this hypothetically. Let's say that next year, the Dow Jones Industrial Average begins the year at 19,000 points. January 1st of next year, which is just a couple months away now, we'll say it's at 19,000. Then throughout the course of next year, let's just say that the Dow surges a full 1,000 points. Yeah, so by the end of next year, the Dow is at 20,000 points. I mean, what an exciting time to be a stock investor, right? The portion of their portfolio invested in the market would have felt the full brunt of that 1,000 point gain. Awesome, right? No, not awesome. As a GRE listener, you might already know where I'm going with this, okay? For those invested in the Dow, if it increases from 19,000 points to 20,000 points next year, you are not gaining ground at all. Because that gain from 19,000 to 20,000 points, that is just an annual gain of a lowly 5.25%. All right, well, 5.25%, that really isn't much different than the real rate of inflation, okay? Not the government reported rate, but a realistic annual diminished purchasing power of the dollar, was probably about commensurate with that phantom gain. If you don't want to believe that and you want to believe it's 3 or 4%, since we're in a somewhat low inflation environment, that would still only be a gain of 1 or 2%. And we're not even counting the other drags on your real rate of return other than just inflation. Okay, so often that buy and hold stock investor thinks that they got ahead by trying to get to the destination quickly, and they're just transfixed on checking the market every day. And ultimately, they're so satisfied that the market gained 1,000 points by the end of next year in this hypothetical, but they didn't even stop to ponder that that's only a nominal gain. The real gain is nothing. And it's often even less than nothing once, in addition to inflation, one factors in the fees, once one factors in that emotional predisposition to buy and sell at exactly the wrong time, no matter how cognizant one tries to be of that fact. And then if their account isn't even tax shielded, the return would be even deeper into the negative, okay? And of course, that's a really simplified example right there, but if you are invested instead, like we are, in strategically purchased, leveraged, cash flowing real estate, you would have enjoyed the journey more because you're getting cash flow as you go, and you're going to enjoy the destination more, and you could realistically expect annual returns of 25% or more with no inordinate risk. And that might still be 20% in inflation-adjusted terms. Okay, that's an ability to enjoy the journey along with the destination right there. Now, let's say that a person is of the type where they just don't have any interest in financial education. I mean, just none, okay? And that isn't you, or you wouldn't be listening to this show. Well, that person with no interest, they're just going to wear a blindfold and throw darts at either real estate to buy or stocks to pick. Well, you know what? In that case, I would actually say that that person is going to be better off with stocks, okay? With stocks and mutual funds, we've discussed how you're not getting ahead after the drag of inflation, fees, emotion, and taxes, but a blindfolded real estate picker would actually make out worse. But now, when it comes to those that obtain just some education with stocks and mutual funds, they still don't perform much better than a blindfolded throwing darts at stocks, okay? But you're smarter than that. You're obviously not wearing a blindfold. If one has just a general education and understands some cash flowing real estate concepts like market and submarket and management and cash flow and leverage, then you have a tremendous advantage at stomping the stock picker over time, stomping inflation severalfold over time, and potentially reducing your taxes to nearly zero. So with no education at all, stocks beat real estate, and with some education, real estate beats stocks handily severalfold. Now, to accelerate your real estate success, I do not believe in self-management. Don't self-manage for long, and you don't ever have to self-manage property at all. If you can, just 1 to 2 years of self-management can help you, sure, but don't get bogged down in self-management for too long. Scale yourself. That's where the real wealth is built. Now, it is just helpful when you can understand the monthly statement that you receive from your property manager, okay? That's kind of like your monthly interface with management. And reading that really doesn't take much more education than reading your monthly or quarterly mutual fund statement either. Now, the word passive is technically kind of a misnomer in real estate, but I don't even think I spend 2 hours a month looking over my property management statements from the various markets that I'm invested in. I know it's far less than that. It's probably 2 hours in total with all my passive real estate activity. And we're only calling it 2 hours because maybe once in a while I do something like shop for better insurance providers every once in a great while, and activities like that might average it back to about 2 hours a month. Now, here's an example. Recently, I was scanning through one of my property management statements, and I noticed 2 things that I was charged for that I should not have been, okay? I noticed a $90 charge to clear a toilet and a $120 charge to maintain a clothes washing machine. And then I replied in an email back to the manager about why I was charged for these 2 things. So number one, an object gets in a toilet because a tenant or their guest stuffed something in there. It does not float up from out in the street. That's the tenant's responsibility to clear that, not mine. They got that in there. And the second thing was the clothes washing machine inside an apartment building laundry room needed some maintenance. I can't remember what it was. I don't actually own those washers and dryers, even though that's my building and my building's laundry room. A vendor owns those washing machines and dryers. So the way it works is the vendor gets 40% of the tenant laundry machine income for supplying the machines, and I get 60%. Part of the contract between me and the washer and dryer vendor is that they have to maintain and repair and replace the washing machines over time. That's all on them. So that $120 washing machine repair bill was charged to me from the property manager when it should not have been. That's something that the appliance vendor handles. So When I told the property manager about this, what I learned is that they had a new employee and she just didn't quite understand how these things worked yet. So I let them know gently that they might want to refine their system so that this doesn't happen again. They're companies, they have people, they have turnover. Sometimes things happen. That's just the kind of thing that you want to look over for on your property manager statement. And real estate is a people and numbers business. So there's just different people that you're going to have to deal with and they turn over time. But that's what I mean. Direct real estate investing, it's not quite fully passive, but it is pretty darn close. And even on a return on time invested basis, the financial returns make it all worthwhile for just minimal involvement on my part. And I actually just told the property management company that they could keep that $200+ anyway because they didn't charge me the lease up fee on a recent vacancy. So, well, we're going to talk about time versus money here. And for you, how time versus money intersects in one place, and that is in your job. And just think about this. A kid is outdoors playing, and that kid looks up to the sky at a jet plane. That kid wonders how awesome it would be to be a grown-up and fly that huge jet someday. That kid's parents tell him that it would be great to be a pilot. You'll have prestige, at least in their eyes, they'll have money. People are going to look up to you. But you know what? That pilot up there in the sky, he wishes he were on the ground back at home because he misses his family. That pilot isn't free. In fact, after a couple years, it's pretty easy for the pilot to forget the reasons that he wanted to become a pilot, or even remember where he is in the country or the world as he crosses 2 or 3 jet-lagged time zones each way every round trip that he makes, okay? And a lot of jobs are like that. So things just aren't always what they seem, and what society deems as prestige certainly is not freedom. If you aren't using Garrett Sutton's Corporate Direct to protect your real estate, you've really got to ask yourself why. I'll be back with Get Rich Education's own John Collins, JC's, back up in the place to be right after this.
Are you having a hard time finding great investment properties? Unfortunately, the best deals are rarely found locally. Successful investing begins with the right properties in the right markets. Norada Real Estate provides everything you need to invest in the best deals across the U.S. Our simple, proven system will help you create real wealth and passive monthly cash flow. Get your free copy of the ultimate guide to passive real estate investing at noradarealestate.com/guide. That's NORADA realestate.com/guide.
You've worked hard to acquire real estate. Don't lose it in a blue instant. We live in a litigious society. Assets must be protected. Rich Dad advisor Garrett Sutton founded Corporate Direct to provide strong and effective asset protection for all investors in America. Corporate Direct offers personalized attention to your specific situation and is very affordable. Call 800-600-1760 and mention Get Rich Education for a $100 discount on all formations. Garrett Sutton wrote Loopholes of Real Estate, Start Your Own Corporation, and Toxic Client, among other bestsellers. He and his experienced team at Corporate Direct want you to be protected right now and with proper corporate maintenance into the future. Visit corporate-direct.com today for a free incorporation kit or call 800-600-1760 for your Get Rich discount. That's corporate-direct.com at 800-600-1760.
This is Rich Dad Advisor Garrett Sutton. To grow your wealth, listen to the always valuable Get Rich Education.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education. We're talking about that time versus money sort of conflict and confluence today. How much is an hour of your time worth? $15? $55? $125? Is it not a commodity at all and no one can buy it from you? Well, Get Rich Education's own John Collins can now put himself in the latter category. And here's the twist to John recently quitting his job. He admits that he quit without having enough passive income to sustain himself. He just has so much confidence that he's going to figure it out due to his network and due to his education. And John does own some income property, out-of-state turnkey, and property in his home market of Anchorage too. John quit his job as a purchasing and supply management professional for an oil pipeline service company. He's in his 30s, and consider that he does have no wife or kids. I recorded this before I left Anchorage the other day. Let's catch up with John. Well, I'd like to welcome back on to Get Rich Education's own business developer and my best friend, John Collins.
Yeah, hey, Keith. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, John, it's good to have you here. We last had you here on episode 100 when you were talking about the value of ideas and so on. And by the way, John is right here next to me, literally shoulder to shoulder. We both live in Anchorage, and we both live in and appreciate this great city of 300,000 people where we can have all these amenities and choices of an urban area, still be 10 minutes from an international airport. But right now, on the table that John and I are sitting at, we each have glasses of drinking water that come from a spring that I collected in jugs myself that flows off of rocks that come off a cliff. So you kind of have that rural-urban divide, and you can really have the best of both worlds in Anchorage. And shortly after record here, in fact, John and I are getting into what we like to call our vertical boardroom. We're going on a steep hike in the Chugach Mountains here. So we do like to get out and travel a lot. And John, you've got to be the person more devoted to education and financial education and personal growth and development than anyone I've ever known. You get on a plane a lot nationally and internationally to stay educated. I can't even think of all the events that you've been to. You've been to Rich Dad events. You went to New Jersey for a Tony Robbins event. Just a couple months ago, you dipped down to San Francisco to go to the Singularity University event. You've been to the Genius Network event in Phoenix not too long ago with Joe Polish and Peter Diamandis. You go to crowdfunding events. You've been to a ton of real estate guys events. You've even appeared on their show, and you've appeared as a guest on other shows. I mean, you're even a regular contributor at our local Small Business Development Center here in Anchorage. And this broader perspective that you get and all the opportunity that's out there, no matter how much passive income you've developed, you recently had the commitment and the conviction to tell your employer, I'm not going to work for you anymore. Now, John, you're a young guy, and you made between $100,000 and $200,000 a year at your job. And most people would look at that as being very successful. It was sort of like I sign off with here on Get Rich Education, though you might quit your day job, don't quit your daydream. And look, someone that knows you and has known you for a long time, I know you don't like me to bring this up because you are a very modest person. You are the valedictorian of your class. You're a very bright guy. And, a lot of people are looking at John, what he quit his job. They're seeing valedictorian to unemployed. But someone might look through that at a different lens and say, no, it's not valedictorian to unemployed. It's valedictorian to unemployable. No one can hire me. No one can limit me to a box and take my dreams away from me. Now, last time you were here, you talked about the value of sabbaticals. So just tell us a little bit about this kind of fear that you had to overcome when you went ahead and left your employer. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so exiting a job after a career after about almost 10 years. Yeah, that was not an easy move, and it's not something I just did overnight. It was just kind of the outcome of a long process, a lot of frustration, a lot of self-discovery, a number of things just kind of coming to a head. But definitely, yeah, there was a lot of fear that had to be overcome. And I think that was probably the biggest obstacle was holding me back, which after a lot of personal reflection and thinking about a lot of other things, really fear is kind of what's been the real hang up for me personally on a lot of things. What I discovered was on the other side of that fear is like just more opportunity. Fear is just kind of like this magical curtain you have to kind of push through that I think we all feel on a lot of different levels, different areas of our lives, our businesses or whatever. And once you kind of stop denying that and just kind of acknowledge it, and then you can kind of see through it and not afraid to poke through it. And that was the biggest obstacle, just willing to kind of stand up to some of those fears of uncertainty and willing to move forward, make a decision and be okay with the outcome, regardless, not knowing what the outcome was going to be. So I basically made the decision. I did not have a plan other than I knew I was just going to decouple myself from what felt like a extreme burden. And I was just really sucking the life energy out of me on so many different levels. So I just decided I'm going to do this. I'm going to move forward. I got a little bit of a safety net. I have some basic raw ingredients for success, but nothing really formulated in terms of a plan exactly, and take it one day at a time.
Part of the reason that you were able to overcome your fear is because you are such a believer in education. Nothing dispels fear like education. That education gave you the power of a lot of ideas. And it's kind of like Eleanor Roosevelt, that famous quote that she gave, "Small minds discuss people. Average minds discuss events. Great minds discuss ideas." You're an idea guy, but it all comes down to a real raw emotion. And that number one emotion is fear when it comes to quitting your day job. And there are a lot of fears. I think the number one fear is a lack of income. Now I'm shutting off a substantial income stream, even though I was trading my time for dollars, even though I was selling my time for money at an employer. So that number one fear is probably lack of income. How are you going to provide for yourself and your family? Banks are reluctant to give new loans for real estate when you go ahead and quit your job. Now, that's more true with conventional loans, and there are some ways to get around that, but that's definitely one factor. And another factor, a lot of people have their social connections at work, and people are going to sever those social connections. Sure, you can kind of keep in touch with those former coworkers, but it's just not going to be the same again. So tell us about some of those fears that you had.
So my biggest fear, which probably is not going to be a big surprise to anybody, was just really the lack of income. Going from a really safe, stable, secure six-figure income with a full-on benefits package, including a pension, to give that up is pretty significant. And, there's just so many things inside you saying, why would you ever do that? That's the dumbest thing you would ever do. But I got to the point where that wasn't going to work for me anymore. And I knew that. So the biggest fear was just giving up that income and then wondering, okay, when is that income going to come back, or when will any income come back? What am I going to do? So I just kind of put that aside. I knew I had a cushion. I was okay with that. The other issue too, Keith, you mentioned ideas and also social aspect. Well, as I spent more time going to some of these events that you mentioned, I just realized and expanded a lot of space in my head going, man, there's just so many other ways out there of doing things. There's so many other people at so many different levels and so many different ways to think about things and ways to apply yourself and your knowledge and your skills and your abilities to the world. And so many different ways to tap into your true genius, your true passion, all those sorts of things. And then I would come back to my corporate job and I just felt like I was surrounded by a whole nother mindset that was complete opposite of that. And that was just so soul crushing, and it was very difficult. And I worked with a lot of great people, both internally and also, externally, people that I did business with in that role. But the mindset was not there, or if it was, we weren't allowed to share it or talk about it because it was not part of the, corporate mission or whatever. So I just really felt like internally I was getting really misaligned with the energies that I was surrounded with. And we talk about you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I just got really, really crystal clear on that. And I realized that basically, things are either moving you toward your goals or away from your goals. And at that point, I didn't feel like I was being moved toward my bigger and better self. It was kind of like holding me back. So it was critical that I put myself in a different situation or remove myself from that type of influence so I can move forward and really be who I need to become.
So even though you might not have the level of passive income that some people do when they build up so much real estate cash flow that they can leave, even though you feel like you're not quite at that level, because you've built up this network of connections, because you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, because you see people like me and Get Rich Education's other business developer, Marcus Whalen, being entrepreneurial, and you surround yourself with other entrepreneurs, I guess you just get so much confidence and you get so much wind behind your sails, and you go ahead and get into the slipstream of others that gives you a certain amount of confidence that you can get there. But now you've got open field ahead of you so that you can go ahead and expand on your ideas because you're not confined by an employer and a corporate culture and all that. And yes, you have lost some connections at work, but you tell me about all these meetings and these entrepreneurial events that you go to, and basically now you're getting your chance to choose your connections, where when you were with your employer effectively chose those connections for you with whomever they hired. Now, some people have a fear of leaving their job that, oh my gosh, my life's not going to have structure anymore. And it's going to kind of beget laziness, okay? No one's going to tell you what to do anymore. And that way you feel like you don't have to do it any longer when no one tells you what to do. I mean, the upsides are, though, that you don't have to wake up to an alarm. You can exercise at your peak energy level. And I mean, does it even make you ask the question now, since it's been about 3 months since you left your job, do you find yourself asking the question, how in the heck did I ever have time to go to work?
Actually, it's pretty funny you say that, because I've thought about that quite a bit in the last 2 weeks. And I've even had some friends and family members make that comment to me after I answered their question about what I've been up to lately. So you're spot on with that. Gosh, you just said so many things there that made me think about other aspects to this pivot that I'm going through right now. The structure, yeah, like for some people, I think they'd have a big challenge with that. And for me, initially, it felt awkward and unfamiliar because literally it's been non-existent for actually almost 2 decades, really. But as soon as you kind of like get over that initial unfamiliarity, then you start to explore it and expand it and realize like, okay, we've just taken the guardrails off now. And now I really can, for the first time in my life, in some cases, for me, that's what I feel like it is I can really explore who I really am and like get crystal clear on what I want to do, what kind of energy I have, what kind of energy I want to put out into the world, what kind of projects I want to work on, who I want to work with, what impact I want to leave, what purpose I want to have, all those things. And it's not something that you just flick a switch and you have all this clarity. It's been a process. I've had a lot of time to sit and think about things. I've been on a long walks. I've been on a lot of great climbs here in the mountains by myself, thinking about things. It takes a while to decouple yourself and unwind and peel back all those layers, all those limitations that get put in your head from a very, very early age, whether it was a school system, your upbringing, your employer, or whatever situation you've been in. So for me, there's a lot of unwinding that needed to occur. But once I get deep down inside, like there's a crystal burning, shining brightly down deep inside that I'm just kind of starting to get in tune with that. Now, I do have a little bit of structure. It's my own structure, though. It's not 8 to 5 structure, but it's John's structure, and it works for me, and I keep refining it, and I can feel it getting better every day, and there's more clarity coming with that. I can feel the energy. I can see the energy in the people that I interact with because I'm emitting the energy, and they're bouncing that back to me, and it's like, okay, now I've progressed as a person. I've evolved, and now I can really, truly be who I am inside, and I hope that's the takeaway for the listeners here. I truly believe every single person has their own unique ability, their own unique interests and passions. And I think it's so important that people take the time to discover that within themselves, whatever that is, and then really focus on that and just focus on making that's the priority. And don't worry about the money, the passive income or whatever. It's really about just kind of being who you are and putting that out there in the best way you can. And all of a sudden things will start changing. It's not like an overnight event. Like I said, it's kind of a process, but I'm just starting to go through that and I can kind of feel the momentum gathering. So it's pretty exciting. And it feels like I'm finally getting to this point where some of the personal fog is lifting.
Your spirit was freed when you left your job. Just a few weeks ago, we heard Harv Eker talk about how you want to be a free spirit and your spirit wants to be freed. Now, let's qualify this. It was a little bit easier for you to leave your job, even though you don't feel like you have a durable passive income stream right now that's going to last you for the rest of your life. You do have enough faith in your network, and you don't have a wife or children that you have to support. That's just a really important thing to bring up. And, I think another important thing to bring up when a person's asking themselves the question, is it time for me to leave my job? Is it time for me to quit my day job and start my daydream? I've got a question for you. Do you even know when it's payday at your employer? Okay. I reached the point in my life where I didn't even know when payday was. And I hear a lot of my coworkers talk about, tomorrow's payday. And I didn't even realize that because I have so many other income streams, most of them from passive real estate. And that's one difference with John. You actually did know when payday was coming. You had that awareness to know that there was still some meaning behind that income. And maybe it's something that you'd even anticipate a little bit. And another thing that I want to tell the listeners when we're talking about time and we're talking about income and awareness of your paycheck is when you turn in your timesheet, look at the number of hours that you've compiled on your timesheet. Maybe if you're overtime eligible, you want that to be a higher number. But every time you turn in your timesheet, whether that's every 2 weeks or twice a month, think about that. That is the tangible amount right there. That's how many hours. That's how much time you're trading for dollars. That's how much time that you're selling for money. And you know what, John Collins, you're a rare guy because not only are you so motivated by education, somewhat paradoxically here, this is Get Rich Education. You're one of the people that's least motivated by money than anyone I've ever known.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting comment there. It wasn't always that case. That's just some of the personal clarity I've kind of come to grips with here recently. I mean, yeah, what kind of started me out on this financial education investing journey was money. I was motivated by money. And the job that I just quit, that career field, that was all money, motivation, money driven. And that's probably primarily why I wasn't the most happy or fulfilled. And I realized I was kind of going down the wrong path. You talk a lot about doing things right versus doing the right thing. And I think I was just trying to do things right, but I wasn't necessarily doing the right thing. the whole reason I was motivated by money was because I just wanted to get away and get, financially free as soon as possible. And so I didn't have to go to that job or be stuck in a career field that I wasn't particularly passionate about, instead of doing the right thing, which would have been to really get clear and spend the time to discover what I was really passionate about and how I really wanted to spend my energy and make that the focus and not worry about how much it paid or if it even paid at all. And now that I've kind of removed that cancer from my system, I'm just focused on where I get the most energy. Like I get up every day and literally am like just going to focus on where my energy is coming from. And I just feed that and I just follow that. And like right now, I'm not producing any income in the types of things I've been involved with the last couple of weeks or even the last month. But I can tell you my happiness level is off the chart. My energy is very abundant and it feels very natural and very genuine. And the people I'm coming in contact with, the activities I'm involved in is all very positive and very passion and interest and impact driven. And I just want to keep that in the forefront. And I know that that's like unstoppable. And, the value you create, that will eventually, there will be dollars that backfill that value at some point. So that's the biggest takeaway for me. Money is great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, money that solves a lot of problems and gives us a lot of ability to do things and flexibility. But for me right now, it's been a big shift just to focus on where my energy is coming from and what gives me that energy. Just feed that and follow that.
Well, I can see how happy you are. I can tell that your return on time invested is through the roof. And maybe from a merely selfish standpoint, I guess I'm a little bit more thankful that you have more time to devote to Get Rich Education. With something like Get Rich Education, you can make more of a direct impact in people's lives than you were doing supply chain management for a pipeline company like you were previously. It's something less superficial that you can connect to. So as we're kind of winding down here, John, any final thoughts on quitting your job?
Yeah, I actually have two other comments I want to make here. During this transition period, I also had an opportunity to go work for a Fortune 100 company. It's got an office here in Anchorage, and it was a very lucrative employment opportunity, even better than the one that I just came from. It looked really good on paper. I went through a very extensive interview process and even started the onboarding process for that matter. But I just wanted to share this with the listeners that it got down to the point where I had to disclose other business activity. And of course, I had to list the podcast as something I was involved in on the side. I got a very stiff, unpersonal notification that I was going to have to cease and desist my involvement with this show. That was just like a real turnoff for me. And it reeked so much like corporate America that I just came from. And I just said, nope, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be able to do this. And that was really critical for me. It really helped me make a choice between very safe, stable, secure opportunity that looked really good on paper, or, am I going to follow my interests and my passions? And to be quite honest, this is much more fun working on this project with Keith, influencing our audience, meeting people in our audience. I just met several of our listeners here locally in the last week. There's nothing more powerful or rewarding than making those connections and just seeing the impact you're making on people. And like I said, I'm following my energy and my heart. Those are things that are really strong and help me a lot. So that's my story. Like I said, I had this great opportunity and I just totally swung the other direction. And that was kind of like, it really put me in a position where I had to choose A or B. That really helped me get crystal clear on that. And the other comment I want to make, for anyone else out there who might be in a similar situation as me, or maybe you're thinking about doing some sort of a pivot or making a pretty serious change in your life, it's funny how things kind of happen here. A couple of weeks ago, I ran across a book called Pivot by Jenny Blake. It just was released a couple of weeks ago. It's basically a playbook for doing exactly what I'm doing. I'm right in the middle of a pivot, and she had a story very similar to my own. It was very inspirational, resonated deeply with me because I could relate 100%. And she's got some great tools in there, some great tips and strategies, ways to think about doing your pivot, ways to plan for it, ways to be successful. It's a very enlightening book. So I would highly recommend that. It's been very helpful for me, and I'm getting a lot of energy from that right now.
John Collins, thanks so much for coming back on to GRE.
Thanks a lot, Keith. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, you've really got to appreciate GRE's own biz dev guy, John, for laying it all out there for us. So as you obtain more passive income in your life than what your coworkers have, you'll begin to notice some things like how they talk about cutting back on expenses and how that gives them thoughts that don't even cross your mind anymore. They might be like, hey, let's plan a trip to Vegas because round-trip tickets are discounted to $4.99 rather than the usual $5.50. Well, you're not going to change a week of your life due to $51, okay? When you have multiple streams of passive income, you just won't, all right? Now, back to John. When John's coworkers found out he was quitting his job and not going to another job as a young, ambitious guy, interestingly, they asked him, are you leaving the state? That might have something to do with the fact that John was in the oil industry. Alaska's an oil-rich state, and oil prices have been seriously depressed for over 2 years now, and that's created a leaner industry. I don't know how much all of this motivates you to quit your job. I mean, that's a decision that's just so personal to you. So rather than thinking of this transition as quitting your job, it's more than that. I think your theme is really more like making a new decision on how to allocate your time. That's what it's really about. And even though John can't completely rest on his passive income laurels yet, consider, too, that John kind of operates at a high level. He's a master networker. He's got a lot of knowledge. It's kind of like how Robert Kiyosaki says that knowledge is the new money. John's got the knowledge and network that he can potentially turn into tangible income. I think he has so many options, he just wouldn't know which one to take. And who knows, this might just turn into a sabbatical that he takes every 7 years, like he discussed the last time that he was here. If you choose to leave your E-quadrant employer workaday job because you do have enough passive income, that is fantastic. If you plan to leave the job because you want to be an entrepreneur, that might be great too. Just remember that entrepreneurship is not for everybody, okay? Because some people really need to be told what to do and be given templates and stencils, or they won't do anything, okay? And if you're one of those types of people, well, then you very well may be better off staying at your, what I'll actually call a turnkey job. You might be better off staying at that turnkey job longer. And I call it a turnkey job because as limiting as you might find it, think it is really a set of systems already put in place for you that you can just largely follow. Some people are going to find that their workaday job is not a turnkey job, okay? Instead, you want to build systems around you with something that you're passionate about, and that's entrepreneurship. It starts with passion, but passion alone really isn't enough. You need to be willing to blaze your own trail unless you have enough passive income to keep you afloat if you want to be an entrepreneur. So that's how this slack-jawed blogger with loafers on sees the time versus money world anyway. Yep, I've got the casual loafers on, and I'm about to loaf my way around Niagara Falls here. Rich Dad Advisor Garrett Sutton will be here on the show with me next week. And as a slack-jawed blogger with loafers on, and did you even know that I've been blogging longer than I've had this show? I also write more recently for Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Advisors. You can read all of my blogs at GetRichEducation.com. You can also watch a few instructional videos I've done right there at GetRichEducation.com. Sometimes I still hear from people that don't have the passive income that they need to quit their job, and yet they can't find the exact turnkey properties to get closer, exact addresses of for-sale turnkeys to help turn their equity into cash flow. But then they tell me that they're not subscribed to our newsletter. Well, that doesn't make any sense. You can subscribe to the free GRE newsletter as well while you're over there at GetRichEducation.com and get those exact actionable opportunities. And I know most of you listen to this show on your mobile device, and all of those free resources work well on mobile too. So open up your mobile browser and check out the free videos, the blog, and the free wealth building newsletter at GetRichEducation.com that you can sign up for. I hope that you got some new perspective on quitting the day job today. Until next week, don't quit your daydream.
You've been listening to Get Rich Education, telling you what the wealthy won't tell you about real estate and investing.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
Cash flow real estate investors nationwide and worldwide, this is Get Rich Education's Keith Weinhold. Forbes has rated Memphis, Tennessee as the #1 cash flowing market in the world. Our good friends at Mid-South Homebuyers have been Memphis's premier turnkey real estate provider for 14 years with a stellar reputation and an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Owner Terry Kerr was born and raised in Memphis. Yeah, he knows the market and has renovated and sold over 1,000 houses in the Memphis area. Find out what their many repeat buyers already know. Their houses are completely renovated, even come with a 1-year builder's warranty and a lifelong rental guarantee. They're a perfect fit for the first-time out-of-state investor or the seasoned investor diversifying their portfolio. Mid-South Homebuyers' friendly staff makes investing easy. Learn more at midsouthhomebuyers.com or give them a call at 901-217-HOME. The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.